The third quarter of Game 2 wasn't basketball, it was bedlam, disguised as defense. The whistle never seemed to stop. 16 fouls in just one quarter, 41 in total, bodies flying across the floor, and an Indiana Fever team left scrambling to find rhythm in a storm of stoppages. The Las Vegas Aces, backed by the Stripes, turned the game into chaos. And yet somehow, A'ja Wilson walked away, celebrated for her numbers, while Lexi Hull, playing through a back injury from Game 1, was being tossed to the ground like a tackling dummy. If you wanted a clean contest of skill, this wasn't it. It was a battle of survival where the referees decided more than the players, and Indiana had to fight just to keep from drowning. From the very start, the imbalance was obvious. At least this time they called one when A'ja Wilson flattened Lexi Hull, but that whistle was the exception, not the rule. All night long, Wilson set, moving screens, leaned into contact, and used her size not just to play basketball, but to batter opponents. Time and again, Hull was shoved, clipped, or outright thrown to the floor. And when she finally tried to hold her ground, the foul went against her. Becky Hammon screamed at the officials every time one of the rare calls went Indiana's way. But when the whistle favored her team, 15 straight possessions, she sat back and smirked. The hypocrisy was glaring. And yet the game went on. The irony of it all was that Indiana still found ways to fight back. In Game 1, they'd silenced the Vegas crowd with pace and precision. Kelsey Mitchell erupting for a career-high 34 points while Aaliyah Boston shut down Wilson on her own MVP night. That performance had embarrassed the champs, stealing home court and flipping the odds of the series. But Game 2 was a different script entirely. The Aces came out determined to claw back momentum, and when the Fever refused to fold, the officials took center stage. Every trip down the floor, someone was called for a bump, a hand check, a phantom shove. Flow disappeared. Rhythm was impossible. And Indiana's best weapon, their tempo, was gone. Stephanie White said it best afterward: "How do you find flow when there's a whistle every 10 seconds? You can't run, you can't build rhythm, you can't make the defense bend. Instead, the game becomes a parade to the free throw line." And for Indiana, that parade was always painted in black and red. Lexi Hull should never have even been out there. Her back was battered in Game 1. So much so that she was listed as questionable heading into the second. Most players in her position would sit, heal, and pray their team could hang on until the series shifted home. But Hull taped herself up, hit the floor, and endured everything Vegas threw at her. And they threw plenty. Wilson shoved her, screens came late and blind. She landed hard more than once. But through all of that, Hull turned defiance into production, drilling 5 threes and tying a Fever playoff record. Every one of them was a statement Indiana wasn't going to roll over, no matter how stacked the deck looked. Afterward, she admitted she was still sore, but treatment and toughness kept her going. That wasn't just grit, it was courage. And yet, every time the Fever pushed, the whistle pulled them back. Midway through the second half, Indiana cut the deficit to single digits, momentum starting to swing, only for 4 straight fouls to be whistled against them in rapid succession. Just like that, the margin ballooned again, and the fight they'd scratched out was erased. Possession after possession turned into nothing but stoppages, the scoreboard tilting further and further. It wasn't about who executed it, was about who benefited from the whistle. Meanwhile, the headlines the next morning didn't talk about Hull's grit or Odyssey Sims's relentless drives through contact. They celebrated A'ja Wilson's stat line: 25 points, 9 boards, 5 steals, 2 blocks. A fine performance on paper, but the context told another story. Those numbers came on the back of whistles, flops, and forearms disguised as defense. Wilson bullied her way into the paint, knocked players aside, and every time she fell backward with minimal contact, the foul went her way. It wasn't dominance, it was protection. The difference between earned buckets and handed ones. Aaliyah Boston felt that most of all, she fought for 13 rebounds and added 10 points, but every touch came with hits to the ribs, shoves in the back, arms locked and held without release. She played like a veteran in her 3rd season, refusing to complain, simply battling through. But her numbers don't show the punishment. They don't show how often contact went uncalled, how many rebounds she ripped away with someone draped over her shoulder. Boston's night was about survival, and the fact she still produced only underscored how unfair the balance really was. Then there was Kelsey Mitchell. Game 1's hero turned into Game 2's target. Vegas made sure of it. They threw bodies at her, face-guarded her off the ball, trapped her at every screen. Every cut she made was met with bumps. Every drive into the lane turned into collisions. She finished with just 13 points, not because she forgot how to score, but because she was smothered, shoved, and hacked until her rhythm was gone. Even Becky Hammon admitted afterward that the physicality was out of control, and that came from the side who benefited most. Mitchell wasn't just defended, she was erased by design, and the referees allowed it. Still, Odyssey Sims gave Indiana hope. She poured in 18 points, turning broken plays into buckets. Time after time she absorbed contact, kept her dribble alive, and somehow found her way to the rim. It wasn't enough to flip the game, but it was enough to keep Indiana alive through stretches where the whistle could have buried them. Her fight mirrored Hull's grit when everything else was stacked against them. But the truth is, Game 2 wasn't about basketball strategy. It was about survival in a storm of whistles. Las Vegas didn't expose Indiana's weaknesses. They dragged them into a brawl, and the referees let it happen. The Aces got their win, tied the series, and walked away with momentum. But anyone watching knew the game had been skewed. If Vegas needed help from both brute force and favorable officiating, what happens when the series shifts back to Indianapolis? That's where everything changes. Gainbridge Fieldhouse will be rocking with 17,000 fans who don't forget what happened in Vegas. Every shove on Hull, every no call on Boston, every whistle that erased Mitchell's rhythm, the crowd will roar for all of it. Officials won't be able to hide behind silence. Every bump will echo louder. Every flop will be drowned out by Becky Hammond herself admitted that her Aces haven't had much success in Indianapolis this season. And now she walks into a cauldron of noise where every Fever run will feel like an avalanche. The Fever know it, too. Hull, Boston, Mitchell, Sims, they all walked away from Game 2 bruised, sore, and frustrated. But they also walked away knowing they're capable of beating Vegas straight up. They already did it once in Game 1. They nearly did it again in Game 2, despite the circumstances. Now, with the energy of their fans at their back, they have the chance to flip the series entirely. That's the story going into Game 3. The Aces tied the series, but the manner in which they did it left questions. Was it toughness or favoritism? Execution or whistles? Because if it takes 41 fouls and a battered opponent just to win at home, what happens when the Fever bring that fight back to Indiana?